Hi, I'm making videos today about starting MySite. So MySite is going to be essentially a personal website. Now we're going to kind of adjust here and there. So don't be too concerned about what the purpose of your personal site is. We're not really going to use it as, resume or portfolio or anything. We're going to use it to learn about HTML and CSS. So we'll keep adding to it throughout the semester. We'll also basically use uh, loosely use your designs from last week. Sorry, your designs that you created last week. So, of course, you wouldn't have designed it just to start with what little we are going to know this week on HTML. But we're going to keep building on it. And by the end of the semester, you might end up with something that looks somewhat like what you had designed, which would be kind of fun to go back and look and see how similar or different they are. But at this point, we just want to get started. And to get started, I gave you some instructions about beginning, and you can use the sample project that I gave you in Cobra in this unit, or you can start with your own. Of course, I'm going to start with my own sample and talk to you about some of that. Clone your GitHub repository. You might have already done that in the GitHub section, but if you didn't, go ahead and do that now. If you've made changes, if you happen to have made changes in your GitHub that haven't been reflected, you might need to do a sync or a push or pull from GitHub. But at this point, let's say that you've already cloned it and it exists. So let's also pretend that this is the folder that I'm using. I have to write the folder I'm using for GitHub, let's say. So we've already done 2. In 3, we're going to create a folder. So I also have this folder already there. Mine's called Unit 3 Sample with my last and first name. You'll name yours something like Unit 3 Assignment and your last and first name. It doesn't matter to me if your name goes in the beginning or at the end. Just make sure that it's in there somewhere. So I downloaded this Unit 3 sample zip and then extracted it into this same folder. And yours, of course, won't have this much stuff in it, but that's what we're working with. And then we'll open the HTML page in a web browser. I'll be using Chrome. And part of the reason that I use Chrome is because Chrome generally keeps up with the latest standards in web design and development. You might find, especially with Internet Explorer, that they don't necessarily. But or something else that might be a less common web browser might be less likely, or might be more likely to appear different than what you think you're designing. So just keep that sort of thing in mind. I will always be opening your projects in Chrome unless you tell me otherwise. So if for some reason early on you've tried it in both Chrome and IE and it looks a certain way in IE that you want to show me, then let me know and I can always try it in a different browser. Okay, so we're going to start by opening the HTML page in your favorite web browser. So I'm going to go into this file, this folder. Notice that I have a couple of folders and the index.html. These are pretty standard naming conventions for the folders. So you'll have CSS files inside your CSS folder, and you'll have images inside your IMG folder, and you'll always have an index.html. It has to be named index.html. I know you're probably going to end up with 50 index.htmls on your computer. I'm sorry about that. You're just going to have to deal with it. Learn to name your folders well, because that file needs to be named index.html. A browser will look for an index.html to open it. Won't be terribly relevant in the beginning because we're going to be opening each of these locally. But at the end of the semester, your final project is going to be published, and that published site needs to have an index.html. So just get into the practice now of having that file named index.html. And it's pretty common to have a CSS, your main CSS, to be called site.css, but it could be called something else. That actually is okay if it's renamed. And then I also have in my image folder, my IMG folder, I have a couple of images, a JPEG and a PNG. All right, so let's come back here and do what instruction 4 said. I'm going to open that in my browser. So I'm going to go down to open with and Google Chrome. Now, if I just double clicked on it, it would open as I wanted it. But no, I have, I'm showing you how to do it anyway. All right, but I also need to open the folder of files in my text editor so that I can edit the files. Now, this is not the same thing as opening the dev tools. You cannot do this assignment. You cannot complete this assignment using just the dev tools. You need to use a text editor. So I'll be demonstrating in VS Code, but you can try in something else if you prefer. So, but I want to open the whole folder, including the CSS folder, the IMG folder, and the HTML file. So I'm going to just go back a step and click on that folder and open with code. So depending on your installation and how your computer is set up, it may or may not work to just go to open with code. You may have to go open with and then choose code, or you may have to open your text editor first and then open the folder within there. All text editors will have an option for opening a folder. So open the entire folder. I'm just going to open with code. Whoops. I'm actually finished with that. And when I open with code, it may open up with a welcome screen. It may open up with these editors. It may open up with just the index file. Depending on your text editor and depending on what you've already been doing in your text editor, it may open differently. But if it opens with the Explorer, or even if it doesn't, you can click on this little button that will explore the files that you have open. I have this folder. I have 2 folders, and you'll see that I can click on their little icons or their little triangles to open up more. So I can see within the CSS folder is the site.css file. Inside the IMG folder, I can see what files I have in there. And then finally, I have the index.html. I do want to work on the index.html first, and then we'll work on the CSS after that. So I think that, oh yeah, so this also says, I'm sorry, in 4, it also says that you may want to open your browser's developer tools so that you can inspect your work. You certainly could do that. Come back to Chrome and open up my dev tools and I can see what's happening. But to be honest, at this point, I have enough on my screen. I want to be able to see enough of my code and enough of my page that I really don't want to have that open myself. But you might find it interesting, or you may be working with multiple screens and you would have plenty of space to do it. But that is something that you can do and kind of see what you're working on as you're going, both in the code in your text editor and in the developer's tools, as well as, of course, on the browser itself. All right, so I'm going to finish this this particular video and start a new one soon.